Hello and welcome to The Hot Seat with Violet Gonda, the program that puts the newsmakers in the spotlight to deal with the tough issues relating to Zimbabwe. So who's in the hot seat this week? Zimbabwe People First opposition leader Joice Mujuru is my guest on the Hot Seat program. The former vice president, who was expelled from ZanuPF in 2015 for allegedly trying to topple President Robert Mugabe, is visiting the United Kingdom, where she will speak at Chatham House and later in the week meet Zimbabweans at a public gathering in Leicester. In this one-to-one interview, I will chat with Joice Mujuru about the political situation in Zimbabwe, her time in ZanuPF, and her views on the economy, corruption, and elections in Zimbabwe, among other issues. Joice Mujuru, first of all, take us back to the very beginning when you decided to join the liberation struggle.
Thank you very much, Violet, and thank you for welcoming us in the United Kingdom to talk about my days of joining the liberation struggle. I was 18 years of age, just having completed my junior certificate, and I was now going for my O-levels. And that was the time when freedom fighters were recruiting in my home area. And I became one of the recruitees who then was able to operate before I left for Zambia in 1974.
Some of your opponents recently, opponents from ZanuPF, wrote some really nasty things in the newspapers, like in the state-controlled newspapers, where they said that you were just a chimbwido and that you actually did not fight in the trenches.
It's unfortunate because people, when they see that I decide not to go for a blow for a blow or respond to such unwarranted attacks, because I don't want to stoop low. To be very honest, George Rutanire, he left the country. I never saw him. He was recruited in June from St. Albert's Mission, and which point I also want to correct many people, because a lot of people have always said I was recruited from St. Albert's Mission. No, I wasn't. I went to school at Howard, which is a Salvation Army secondary school. I wasn't recruited at Howard. I joined the freedom fighters from my home area, which is in Dotito, in December. And I never saw George. George was never my commander. What I only know George of having done during my presence was out there in Zambia, when George was now asked to go and be our, not representative per se, but to go to Sweden and be part of the group that was collecting clothes for freedom fighters and pack them to send them back to Mozambique. That's all that I know about George Rutanire. But these are people who are paid to denigrate me because of who I am.
Yeah. And also it was shocking to read reports saying that, and I quote, and this is from George, this woman, Joice Mujuru, contributed to the deaths of many people because she loved men too much, and that you got promoted because of the sexual relationships you allegedly had with war commanders. What can you say about this?
I don't want to go into detail because I'm not such a character. People know me. Now I'm a widow for 5 years. I have no boyfriend. I've lived my rest of life. I've never had a boyfriend in my marriage. So for George to say that to me, only God knows. Because he himself, he knows what he was saying. He was lying. And you can't say to somebody, I caused the deaths. Where did you see those deaths happening? since I never met you. Yes.
And personally, how was it like for you to balance, looking after your children and then also being in the trenches? Because I understand that you had a couple of your children during the liberation struggle, no?
I had two of my girls out there. When I was pregnant with my first girl, and I broke my waters in a battle. And during that day, we lost a lot of comrades. I still remember Serbia and others died that day. And it was was it the 30th or the 31st? The 1st of August, we lost. And because those were the days when a base camp called Mudzingadze was attacked. And that's when I broke my waters and I had my first girl called Rungano. And it like what I've said, war is not something that you can just, piece around or play around and so forth. But those are the causes of the war. And during that time, after giving birth to my daughter, I only had my daughter for 3 weeks because of my responsibilities. And we had other wives of other commanders who were not in the battlefield or who were in Zambia. My daughter was then taken by her aunt, Mrs. Tongogara, to look after her. So I was free now to be able to remain behind and continue with my responsibilities.
This was in Zambia?
My daughter went to stay in Zambia, but I remained in the battlefield in Mozambique.
And, speaking of the Tongogaras, there's so many conspiracy theories about who killed Tongogara and who killed Herbert Chitepo. What do you know about this?
I know nothing about it. I think we are in the same, basket, or we understand the same things. And that wasn't my, conviction really to try and dig up as to who did what. Because that wasn't my intention really, but that it was a loss which affected all of us as young girls, as young freedom fighters. Because to me, both these gentlemen, I looked up to them and they looked after me like their own child. So it wasn't something that an individual like myself would try and dig up as to who did what. Otherwise, someone would end up giving lies to the world or to those that would want to know exactly what happened. Yes.
And then in independent Zimbabwe, quite a number of senior government officials got disability allowances. And I understand initially you were granted 55% disability allowance, but later returned it. Can you tell us why?
Not even later. There and then I didn't even take it because I didn't need it anyway. There were people who were more disabled than even us who were said to have been traumatized. For sure, we were traumatized because we were young girls, but I didn't want it because I was a minister. I was employed. And that was my excuse. Why would I want to dig into a share where others were more disadvantaged than me?
How had they even come up with that? Were you assessed and did you apply for it?
No, I didn't. And you know what Hundri was doing? It was like more or less everyone who has been involved in the war has been traumatized. So him being a doctor, I know some of these traumas might be after effects. So some of these people must get it. But I returned it.
So you didn't even apply for it?
No, I didn't.
Do you know if any other senior government officials returned the money or it was just yourself?
I don't know. I wasn't interested in knowing what other people did.
Is it true that Webster Shamu actually applied for you?
I don't remember because those things were being done outside offices that were involved in.
So what went wrong? Zimbabwe's independence was, the economy was the same as a country like Singapore. And then looking at the country now, what would you say went wrong?
First 10, 11 years of independence, things went very, very right. And I'm sure that's when the Chizeros, that's when new entrants whom we never saw in the battlefield or in the struggle were really called to come and help and so on. And things went very well. But I'm sure when he decided to do things his own way, that's when I'm sure things started just going haywire.
Like what?
Nothing can't come to mind immediately, but I'm sure you remember very well in 2000, that was now in 2000, you remember the issue of land. I can take it from there. Maybe I can give that as an example. There was a way how the land issue was supposed to be done, where, you were supposed to identify land, supposed to discuss with the landowner, agree as to improvements, and then you do all the processes were properly laid down. And I still remember the British, the Americans had also given in terms of compensation money, which they had given to Zimbabwe. And I'm sure there was some time when they asked how the previous monies were used. And once that question is asked, if you have used it properly, why would you refuse to give a proper answer? Because it's a straightforward thing that you should have just said, okay, fine, if it was 42 million, yes, I bought this farm because so-and-so had, been, vetted and the proper compensation was given. And why go round as if that money has been used for other things? So that's where transparency was questionable. And for junior ministers like ourselves, we wouldn't know how these monies were being used. Okay, talk of this program, the maybe for short of quick thinking, which Chizero was known for, which raised quite a lot of money for Zimbabwe. You would want to know how that money was used. If for anybody would have wanted to question if you had used that money correctly, would you really ask them why they are asking that question? If you're a transparent person, if you're an honest person, you should be able to just give them, a cash flow of how your things have been, done, how your monies have been used. You wouldn't be, maybe fighting with the British or the Americans as to how their monies were used or who was given
But
that.
was it only the president who was at fault here, or there were other people?
Leader, when something is happening, it's the leader who is questioned. And when you, the leader, you are questioned, you call your team to give you that full explanation, because you are not the one who is the bookkeeper. You have put your team in place to do that exercise. So, but when you are now asked and you are not in a position to put things across and make their and lay off their fears, it means you are now maybe supporting corruption. You are not free to answer to things that are straightforward.
I'll come back to talk a bit more about the issue of corruption and also the land issue. But how do you respond to people who say that you were in this party that is accused of gross human rights abuses, shocking corruption, as you mentioned just now, total disregard of the welfare of the people that you claimed to have fought for? So why did you actually wait to be thrown out of the party? Why didn't you just say, enough is enough, I'm not going to be part of this, corrupt party?
There are a lot of things violate to this thing. It's not a straightforward thing to saying you were there, you should have walked out. Mind you, first and foremost, it was a decision I made on my own to go and fight. It was a decision that I made to now say, okay, fine. The leadership that we have, are they following the policies of ZANU as it was given me by those that first of all spoke to me in order for me to pass that decision? Fine. But because it's now happening to somebody who is still young, who is immature, not exposed, and you are now saying to yourself, all right, this time, with what I have learned, because after attaining independence, you know what happened? Some of us, especially personally, decided to go back to school because I felt inadequate. By so doing, you're passing a decision because you now want to understand things as they are being done. By doing that, time is moving and a lot of things are happening, not in your face, because people think when issues of security are being decided, they are decided in general view of every cabinet minister. No. That's why there are security ministries. That's why there are security council organizations and so forth, because it's not public information. Because once you take it to cabinet, it ends up being public information. You see? And I was rated then, like many other people, as in that section. It's not something that you would say it would come and we discuss it as to how many attacks are going to be done, or how many arms are going to be sent to, and so on and so forth. No, that wasn't in anybody's domain to do that. There were specialized ministries and committees to do that. So it took me that long to do that. But let me tell you, I told Mugabe, I met Mugabe 3 times. I met Mugabe on 22nd October 2014 when the wife had started talking bad about me, and I requested him that him, his wife, and myself, we talk about things that were not clear to them because their accusation was unfounded.
That you were trying to topple the president?
Yes. I met Mugabe on the 29th of October. I asked him who had told him, or where did he get the information that I was, looking for a sniper to kill him when I did not have even a pistol in my house. And he even said, you know what, this thing has been said by the military intelligence. And I asked him, why military intelligence and not Central Intelligence? Said, I no longer trust Central Intelligence. And yet this is his people. You see, military intelligence, according to my understanding, should have been people fine who should work hand in hand with the Central Intelligence people. But why would you discard your other arm and keep your other arm? Then I said to them, anyway, these people are actually relegating you to throwing away your political history, which you've worked for so hard. I told him. On the 1st of December 2014, after they were going around saying all sorts of things, and I'd already passed my decision, because this is unfounded, I'm not going to fight them. I'm not going to. Mind you, this is another time when culture and respect, and don't forget, that time I had thought, how did my husband lose life? Because that is still a big question. And I said, would this be the reason why my husband died in this mysterious way? They wanted to attack me when I had nobody closer to me to see what was going to happen to me.
Who do you hold responsible for your husband's death?
I'm not accusing anybody. That is something that we have to live for now. I said to myself, who is dependent on me? My family, immediate family, my children, my grandchildren, my mother. I still have a living mother. And I said, rather than I continue fighting these people, let me keep quiet. But I'll tell Mugabe, I'll leave you, which I did on the 1st of December, 2014. When he wrote around December 14, 15, that I have removed you from ZanuPF, it was an aftermath. I'd already bade him farewell.
But my Mujuru, some would ask, one, why did you wait to leave the party when they were only starting to attack you as an individual? Why didn't you leave when all these atrocities were happening, number one? And number two, the most important thing, your husband died in a mysterious way. Why didn't you leave then when you knew that, it wasn't just an accident? Why wouldn't you have just left then?
You know that it's in a public domain that before I became Member of Parliament for Mount Darwin North constituency, I had bid farewell Mugabe. This was in Bindura, at Manenga. I've forgotten the year, but we can look back. It should be 89, not 89, maybe, yes, could be somewhere thereabout. But it was in public because there was a rally there. I remember very well. Things had not gone well when choosing members of parliament in Mashonaland Central. A lot of canvassing, dirty work, and so on. And I said to myself, I think this is the second time this thing is happening to me. The first time it happened to me was when I was removed from being secretary for the Women's League and became secretary for education in ZanuPF when Mugabe took over. It wasn't a clean one, but I kept quiet. And this time, when we were now campaigning, Mashonaland Central leadership had ganged up to saying things which I did not like. And Mugabe had come to address at Manenga, just outside Bindura. I even sang Basandasi and Apedza, meaning I've done enough and I'm sure I'm satisfied. Why? It's because I had decided, no, I think I should change what I'm doing. I've fought for this country, I've done what I've done, but I think I can concentrate with my education. He himself, Mount Darwin constituency came about as his own personal decision that no, let's have another constituency. And it was designed in such a way that my own mother's house was the boundary that you should mark Mount Darwin North constituency going to Mkumbura. This wasn't the first time. But I'm sure he is a character when he has his own, you call it MacIval way of doing things. He would say, I haven't done enough with this person. I have my rightful moment with which I should strike. Because it's not because I had not tried it before. I had. So, in why when were these atrocities happening and you were quiet? Atrocities started in 1982, and I was 27, a child of 27.
Yes, this is Gukurahundi.
Yes, because that's what you're talking about. Yes. You are 22. You are 27, and you have rightly said, Ma'am Mujuru, why didn't you leave? And I told you, Violet, that time you are young, you are inexperienced, you don't know nothing, you don't know what is happening, and
but what was you in government? What was being said in government, and even the central committee? Were you in the central committee?
I was in the central committee, yes.
Which endorsed Gukurahundi?
No. It was Gukurahundi endorsed go and kill people. It was never like that.
How did that happen?
It was never, and I still remember very well. I wasn't there when people would sit down and say, President, set an army to go and kill the masses of Matebeleland. Never. That was never discussed in either Central Committee, Politburo, or Cabinet. No, it was never like that. But when such things are happening, they are not done as, like what I said, in general, in public. And when you're taking things to the Central Committee, how many people are in the Central Committee? You're talking of people who are more than 100. And it's no longer a secret. And these things were done secretly.
So when Organizations like the Catholic Commission for Justice and Peace and other human rights groups wrote all those reports exposing what had happened. First of all, have you read those reports? What was your initial reaction to that? And after that, was it ever then discussed?
Shocker. It was never discussed. It was a shocker. And I'm sure he himself even came out and said it was a moment of madness. But let me tell you, Violet, it's never easy. Moment of madness happens once, maybe minutes. Say, oh, I'm sorry, Violet, it was a moment of madness. Not when years gone past. And you, as the head of state, you know exactly what's happening. But anyway, be that as it may, you cannot continue to say it was a moment of madness and you think that has closed that chapter. What you can only say is we cannot do blood loss for the second time. But what we should be able to do, because in Zimbabwe, culturally, we have our own approaches that will then cleanse and appease and show your can I say remorseness, your plea to say this was a moment of madness, but your actions of how you do it will then show those that he had lost the loved ones that this is the way how it is done, accepts. And like what I can tell you right now, sitting down with Matabeleland people, the chiefs, the opinion makers in Matabeleland, they understand this thing happened. And it's not something that we should just live like that. And
if you are elected in your new government, what would you do about this issue? And especially in terms of perhaps even helping the victims' families?
What even I'm thinking right now, and I've said it to people, maybe Mugabe did not have confidence in me to an extent of saying, now that Joyce, you are my vice president, rather than we have a ministry that will deal with reconciliation, we need to take it further. Let's not use Johnny Nkomo, their son, to do that. But we want someone else. And me being a mother, being a woman, going to the chiefs and approach it our own way, with a way of showing them that what happened was not right.
Why didn't you bring that up when you were the vice president?
You know, it's an issue that for a character of Mugabe, you wouldn't. You wouldn't. That one is a character of a headmaster. Do this, do that. If he does,
he's unapproachable. Even towards you, his favorite daughter.
But am I still his favorite daughter?
At that time, but at that time,
you had his hidden, feelings, and you wouldn't dare to go to him and say, "Can I do that?" You would just see that this face would accept or not accept. You yourself, you know it.
And your husband, where was he during that period? Since he was in. Oh, he was in Pakistan during Gukurahundi.
To come and work on that one, yes, during Gukurahundi.
So, can you share what his thoughts were about this? How did he feel when he found out that this is what was happening? Since he was Army General at that time, was he?
He had to be called to come back and sort that out because people who were behind couldn't. And when he came back, because he's a former Zipra, he had lots of friends in ZAPU. And by being a Zanla commander, again, so he was like the middle of the road person who would take both sides to really understand each other and get things sorted out, and which happened. Yes.
And then coming to the issue of elections, Um, do you accept that ZanuPF rigs elections, and that this has been something that the opposition has always complained about in the past, that the 2002 election was rigged, the 2005 election, 2008, and to some extent 2013 elections? What can you say about this?
Uh, what I can say, maybe to me, the rigging of stashing ballot boxes, I don't think happened. But that asking people to vote whilst they are being supervised, yes, because that we are beginning to hear it from those that were being supervised, like the uniformed people. And they are telling us right now that don't accept as opposition parties that you allow them to ask us to vote within our own establishments. Leave us to go and vote from where we come from. We want to be free.
Surely there are even more ways that ZanuPF could have rigged. Surely there could have been other ways that ZanuPF had been doing this. What about these reports saying that there's an Israeli company called Nikuv that's also used by ZanuPF to help rig elections? Did you know anything about this?
It's one of those things again. Nikuv, yes, I've heard about Nikuv, and Nikuv is there. But when you ask me that, how does Nikuv do it? I'll tell you I don't know, because it's not in my department. I don't even know. I was not even involved, and so on. And you know what? If Mugabe was not in a position to show you party bank accounts, how would he be able to show you what Nikuv does? Which is simpler. For one to know party funds, party accounts, than to know what Nikuv does.
Who handles party funds?
Ask me. You are asking me, and I'm telling you I didn't know. That's his character. He will choose, I want to do it with a friend, or I don't want to do it with my vice president. And mind you, I served with 2 vice presidents, and both of us were asking each other, do you know anything about party accounts? I said, no, I don't know, and that's Musika. You go to Johnny Nkomo, Joyce, do you know anything about party accounts? And up to now, I don't know, and we are not even involved. And when I tried to assist party in fundraising so that we don't do like we are taxing old people, you know what happened? I was accused of looking for money for myself. And yet he knows that money came straight to the party without any cent taken away.
So
you can imagine the type of a person.
So you're saying it is true when people say that Mugabe is in total control of the party, because a lot of people believe that, given his age now, that he's really not with it anymore, and that there are some other people who are actually in control and that they're just using him. So are you saying that Mugabe is in total control? He knows what's happening, and that he was the mastermind behind all these shenanigans?
You think he is a fool? He is more cleverer than most people. But see what other vice presidents are going through right now. It's not just Joyce. See what other vice presidents are going through right now. You think Mandita Wepichimene is her own thinking to stand up and shout at a vice president? You think Mahoka can stand up and shout at a vice president? You see how he plays around with...
But Mugabe can hardly walk and stay awake.
Ah, okay. So do you think he sleeps all the time? Do you think he sleeps all the time? He works through people.
So who else is in control? His wife is as powerful as his...
Hear what the youths were saying, the way how they campaigned and caucused against me. Did you hear what the youth said? 7 youths in the country out of 10. They said Mugabe himself, his wife Grace, sat down with those youths to talk about your own vice president and lie about your own vice president. There are tapes to that effect. So he's good at that. And we are talking about what happened only hardly 2 years ago.
And his wife, how powerful is she?
Maybe when people now can't even decide, they are saying Amai is the best person to think about and to listen to, you see what is happening. They wouldn't have, allowed her to go about Chiweshe rally shouting about a vice president. And there are quite a few occasions when she was really talking about what she wants.
So, going back to the issue of elections, you are part of NERA, the grouping of opposition political parties, and you calling for electoral reforms. Knowing what you know about, the way ZanuPF, for lack of a better word, rigs elections, what would you think would be the things that you want addressed before you are to participate in any election going forward?
One, I know in Zimbabwe, about 8 million people are of voting age. But most of the time you hear those who have voted are about 3 million plus, or call it 5 million to 6 million who are of the voting age. Where are the other 3 million? When you are only getting 3 million to vote for Mugabe and Tsvangirai, and maybe a few. It's like people of Zimbabwe don't want to vote. And what we are now saying, don't complain if you don't vote. Because what you should do now is go and register and vote. And the younger age is the largest. And those are the people who are hard hit. They don't know what will happen with their future offsprings. They are graduates right now. They have no jobs. They are busy selling airtime on the streets of Harare, selling oranges and what have you. Is that what you want? And you are complaining that elections are rigged. How would he rig? I take it when he wins 3 out of 10. How would he rig? But when he wins 3 out of 5, of course he can add 4 to make 7 and become the winner. But I'm saying for as long as Zimbabweans are not yet there in wanting to change the status quo, we'll continue to accuse ZanuPF of rigging. But otherwise, we are rigging ourselves.
But what electoral reforms are you calling for?
We are now saying what we want is, we want the Rita Makarao not to run the 2 posts that she's running. We also want the voters' roll to be viewed and supervised by all parties. There are numerous things that we want the level playing field to be looked at and made sure it's leveled.
Now, Professor Jonathan Moyo has basically said ZanuPF is not going to agree to any electoral reforms that will remove it from power. So will you participate in 2018 if your demands are not met?
But what we are going to tell them as people first, with or without those electoral reforms having been looked at, for as long as Zimbabweans decide, we can beat ZanuPF hands down. Because yesterday they used to boast about war veterans going to, frustrate voters in the rural areas. Now they have frustrated war veterans. He doesn't want to look at war veterans. And these are the war veterans that are saying, no, this time we want to make sure that what we fought for is realized by the nation of Zimbabwe and not the few. The economy has gone haywire. Right now, when you want to talk about hunger, come to Zimbabwe. That's when you can actually realize what hunger is all about and why. It's maladministration, no agricultural policy that is conducive enough to see Zimbabweans, producing for themselves.
Do you think the diaspora community should be allowed to vote?
Diaspora community has to be allowed to vote because you did not come here, at your own volition, most of you. You came here as economic, persons is hunting for good living because there's nothing at home. You came here because you ran away from political persecution. And we are saying for all those to happen, if home was right, some of you wouldn't be here. You want to correct home. So for you to get home to be correct, you have to vote so that you come home and enjoy.
And your position on the National Transitional Authority?
Which one are you talking about? I don't want a National Transitional Authority that will play the role of maybe causing a coup. I want a National Transitional Authority that will be agreed upon, if there is going to be one anyway, by Zimbabweans. And they really come up with ways and approaches that will be conducive and agreed upon by most people.
Does the NERA agree? Have you had these discussions about the NT?
We haven't discussed about those issues.
Okay.
We have not come to discuss on them.
Describe to us what happened in the 2008 general elections, because the opposition said more than 500 of their members were killed, including activists like Gift Tandare, Tondera Ndira, whose hand was behind the violence. We can't just blame one person to just say Mugabe was in charge, so he's to blame.
I don't have individuals who really committed that. But I'm sure with MDC in their different settings, they know who the hotheads were. Maybe they do know that. But let me tell you, that's the time when I actually came out and I said, who is sending people to kill other people? And that came about when the Chiweshe Crowhead people, 11 of them perished through that violence. And why? Because my question was, if Mugabe had lost in that constituency, I would have probably understood that you are now retaliating that you wanted Mugabe to win. But Mugabe had won. And especially during that election, of 2000, it's only Mashonaland Central Province where Mugabe won outright. He even lost in Mashonaland West, his own home province. And why? And that was my question now. Why is it that you are going about killing people? Do you think by killing you get people to understand or to like you or to follow your party? Or you're even alienating yourselves? And I even warned them. I said, from the cultural perspective, don't you think you are killing those people and their spiritual haunting will go to ZanuPF? Nobody's called ZanuPF. Whatever you commit yourself in the name of a party will come to haunt you and your family. And look at what is happening now. Where People First is going around saying, we don't want any violence. We are a peaceful party. We want to unite the people of Zimbabwe. But ZanuPF continues to come after ZimPF people. Only 2 weeks ago, General Mtambara was fought when he had gone to rescue one of us who was held 3 days under house arrest because they want to take over his land, when you have already announced that land invasion is already passed. You can imagine that the thinking of this party is of violence after violence.
So even on issues like Itai Dzamara's disappearance, this happened when you were still in government.
No. Itai Dzamara, I think, disappeared when I was already in opposition, and I even spoke about that issue many times. And to me, in a way, I would tend to say, are they still doing it for a 92-year-old man? Or these are, what do you call them, the fifth or fourth, whatever, groups that are trying to do certain things which we do in the name of Mugabe or in the name of ZANU? Can we not have, if our government was a serious government, they should actually be in a position to stop this? That is, if they are not covering up.
What would you say were your greatest achievements when you were in government, especially during the time when you were vice president?
My greatest achievement was when I was campaigning for irrigation schemes. I went to Chirezi and campaigned for our new farmers to grow more and better sugarcane so that they can be seen to be new economic entrants. And when I was also trying to make sure that we don't antagonize for no apparent reason, even during GNU. And I'm sure these are some of the things why my case started, because I've always been labeled as a liberal, and we will carry on.
So what would you say were your failures, or what do you regret?
What I regret, taking it from how sitting on the terraces now and hearing how people are deeply, deeply hate and stressed, is the way how government has been going about issues that really have disintegrated families and social issues, to say the least, and also the political persecution that the nation has gone through. Like right now, we are talking plus minus 2 million or 3 to 3 million in South Africa. And I don't know how many thousands, hundreds of thousands that are here in Britain, and how many in America and elsewhere.
Tell us a little bit about your problems with Strive Masiwa and the issue of the economic license.
I don't know why people think I have a problem with Masiwa, and I had a problem with Masiwa. When you are in government, you don't deal with things as an individual. Mm-hmm. And that time, the government had decided that they just wanted to give 2 licenses. And the reason why they had favored Telecel, not me, but its government. The reason why they had favored Telecel is because it had included black empowerment, you see, for the 2 licenses that they had chosen. And the first one, obviously, they'd wanted it to go to Net 1. And when all this happened, and when they saw that, no, there was room anywhere of giving a 3rd one, and even a 4th one if we want. That's when they said, no, why are we blocking Masiwa? We have to. And it's not a personal hatred. And mind you, Masiwa was a family member, or is a family member. And before Masiwa left Zimbabwe, I always joke about it. He left with some of my plates he used to take from home with food, because he's a part of us. It was to do with government policy of the time. It wasn't my personal.
And earlier on, you mentioned the issue of corruption. How deep-rooted is it in ZanuPF, and what do you plan to do if you are elected in the next elections in terms of dealing with corruption?
Corruption in Zimbabwe is everywhere now. It's bad. It's cancerous. And I think what we have to do is to just say, do you know, once this thing, you apprehend 1 or 2 senior people, and people see that this, for sure he has been involved in this and that, it will end. How can you run a country like that? How can you? And people sometimes, they say, President, so and so has done so much. And you see that one person you know for sure does this type of a job, and he ends up with a house more or less like this hotel. Where did he get the money from?
So what about this 15 billion?
I was equally shocked, because I said to myself, okay, fine. You know the issue of diamonds, Violet? We are not the only ones in the world that have diamonds. We just neighbors, South Africa, Botswana, they are into diamonds. And why would you want to invent the wheel? Why don't we just use exactly what other countries are doing? And why would we want to use it as if it's something that you are counting from a pocket? Because being a vice president, to tell you the truth, ask me, who was adjudicating those companies that were going to do the diamonds? And when they were doing their diamonds, who was looking at their books and whatever? And who was even awarding licenses?
Who was it?
Ask Mugabe.
What about the minister? There was a minister there.
Obviously, maybe with the minister. The 2 of them, maybe they can give us the rightful answer. Because it was never a cabinet thing. And I'm happy that time We had Tendebita as our Minister of Finance, because that was during the GNU, eh? And he was always complaining, I'm not seeing diamond funds. He would say, but who is doing this? We are thinking you as the Minister of Finance, you are part of this. Why are you not telling us what you do with Mugabe, with monies that are coming from diamond selling?
Did you have a claim in Chiazwa?
No, I'm not even a miner. I'm not even a miner in my whole life. I don't even know how to mine.
But that's quite strange, because I'm sure you've seen reports of people saying that your family owns a diamond mine.
Oh, yeah. Solomon, yes, had a mine in River Ranch. But when Solomon resigned, he was very open. He told the president, I want to do three things. I want to be a farmer. I want to be a business person. I want to be a miner. And being somebody who was with ACR was not a secret. And owning 10% of River Ranch was not a secret. And you know it violent with African men, these ones you see. They don't say their businesses with their wives, let alone a wife.
Let alone the vice president of the country.
You are a wife, even if you're a vice president. So since Solomon died, and they make a huge story out of his estate, I'm sure this is when they should have told the world how worth Solomon was. Because for somebody of the magnitude of what they have said Solomon owned, they wouldn't have kept it quiet. Because they should have said everything. That's why I hate with Zimbabweans, because they are the biggest liars sometimes.
There's a lot of speculation. You know, we hear that your family owns a lot of farms, own this diamond mine.
Last week they published those who own my farms, and my jury just has one.
That's what I was going to say. That are you willing to publicly declare all the assets that you actually own, so that at least that will put to rest all the speculation?
Oh, why not? Why not? This thing, I've already, you know what, it's actually something that I have with my lawyer. Because I said to my lawyer, guess what? Now that I have decided to stand as president of People First, and once convention comes, and I am confirmed their president who will stand for elections, I'll say out. And anybody who will then say, Ma'am Juru owns the tree X and why Pete and why Donkey, will have then to come out. Right now, in my whole life, Violet, I never invaded a farm. Personally, I never. My farm, which I have, has been taken by Solomon Mujuru as my husband. Because our two farms, which we had titled these two, were taken by government. So this
they took by force, or
like anybody else's farm.
Why?
Why would you say don't take mine when they're taking everybody's mine?
But
they took.
While you were still in government.
Whilst I was still in government, whilst Solomon was still alive, they took. You see, so I'm not they are not only whites who were affected. Even us blacks, even at my level, I was affected.
But the commercial farm of the farm that you're talking about, that you said was taken by your husband.
Where I am right
that's Alamine.
Alamine, yes.
The white commercial farmer says that Mr. Smith, that the farm was taken without payment, obviously. But what also he was angry about was that even the tobacco that he had grown on the farm was then pocketed by your late husband. Do you think that's fair, that he actually grew all the crop, and when the farm was taken, everything was taken, including the crops?
Fair. It wasn't fair. And I'm happy because I've already started looking for him. This message has gone to him. I'm happy. I even spoke to David Coulthard, who even gave me very recently where Mr. Smith is. Because last year, I had asked one of the business people who had an idea of where Mr. Smith was. because my thinking was such things have to be discussed. Compensation has to be given, even if it means I want to give him what is due to him. Because I feel it. I'm also a business person in my own right. I'm a farmer. I know how hard it is. And it's difficult to really be a real reputable business person and for you to just say, I'm taking a farm and you should not get anything. Right now, I can tell you I'm a reputable chicken farmer, but it's hard. So for me to just take it and sit, it's not nice. I'm ready to work and pay him what is,
So even generally in terms of your land policy, do you think this is what you're going to do in general in terms of perhaps having a land audit and
land audit is a thing that
and compensation for those who had
compensation has to be done. Land audit has to be done, and that is understood. We had agreed that the policy has to be one man, one farm. And why would you have more than one? And how are you utilizing that one is the question that people first is asking. You must have that farm which you are utilizing to the fullest. If you are just taking a farm for you to be priding yourself of owning tracts of hectares, that's not what people first is going to look for. That's why we are saying we want to rationalize the land issue. And for anybody who calls Zimbabwe home, should be afforded land.
There was a report by journalist Charles Rukuni claiming that your daughter, Nyasha, and her, I guess her then husband, a Spanish husband, Pedro del Campo, tried to sell $15 million worth of blood diamonds, allegedly from the DRC and Zimbabwe. What can you say about this?
I think the best thing is to ask both. It's better to get it from the horse's mouth. I'm a mother. These were married people. What they were doing when they were in Spain, I don't know, because they never did it in Zimbabwe. I wasn't there. But when you are a mother and you are holding this post, it's like you know everything of what your child does. Like I'm here in London. Do I know what happens in 2 days ago when I'm here in London with my children? I don't know. Where they slept, what they ate, whom they met. But these are things that I'm asked to vouch for, which is unfair when the people are still alive, when they were fending for their own family. I think the best thing is to ask them how, when, why, and how they should be able to have been cautioned and what have you.
I think the reports say that especially the husband was doing it on behalf of your family.
No, they were in Spain. They were not in Zimbabwe. They were in Spain. They were not in Zimbabwe. If they were doing it on behalf of my family, who had sent them? Because it's not me. That's for sure. Who had sent them to do that? That should be asked. We don't have to look for anybody to come up with answers when the person is still alive.
All right. What will it take? Let's talk about the way forward. What will it take to get rid of President Robert Mugabe and ZanuPF?
Hey, why would you want me to release my secrets? That's never to be divulged. That's never to be divulged. I'm sorry.
Some of the view that you still resemble the old establishment, though, and that can you at least tell people what you're doing to rebrand yourself? Because the issue of trust is very strong, and people want to trust you, but they don't know how they can trust someone who has been part of the system for a very long time.
Violet, anybody who is 25 years, let me just calculate, 25 years and above was once ZanuPF. Don't forget, I'm a freedom fighter. And I fought under ZANU and worked under ZanuPF. And I am telling you, there are a lot of things that ZANU and the ZanuPF did which were very good. And we are not just going to bury them. For instance, education. How are you going to denigrate education, which has done so much wonders, not just in Africa, but here in Europe? How are you going to denigrate what he had done about building clinics, though they are no longer functional? But it was a good thing, which he did. Is the, regression that is now taking place, which we are not happy with. Is the rhetoric, is the committal to certain policy matters that we are not happy with. And I'm saying, as a freedom fighter, I fought for the freedom of every Zimbabwean. And when you are persecuting a certain race or a certain clan or a certain group, that's not what I fought for. And this is what I hate. And this is what People First is complaining about. So, yes, it might look like we are but I'm telling you, ZanuPF is now persecuting us to the extent of even beating us, to the extent of even destroying our properties. So, why would you say I'm still ZanuPF? If I was ZanuPF, why are they persecuting me? And I am telling you, I'm going to fight corruption. And I'm going to make sure that for everybody who is coming to Zimbabwe to invest, ZanuPF is going to witness that People First and Mujuru as a leader is going to underwrite for everybody who is coming to invest in Zimbabwe. Why do you persecute somebody who wants, one, to make a life, also to make your country live, and also to get your government to move on? Because there is no government that can move on without business people. So these are the things. And with indigenization, we are going to emphasize empowerment. Because there is no country that does not practice indigenization. But it's the way how you do it. You don't persecute people because they are coming to invest in your country. And it's now like a way of enriching yourself by now introducing indigenization that as if to try and segregate and separate and whatever. Why would you want to do all those things to try and complicate things which are not supposed to be complicated?
And the bond notes?
Wow, bond notes. You are bringing us back to Zimbabwe dollar. That's exactly what people are talking about. ZanuPF government and Mugabe did not realize that people have woken up. They now know how they have been shortchanged over the years. They once did it when they put us up to quintillion. And all of a sudden, pensioners woke up with nothing to feed on. Right, as we are talking of bond notes, don't forget, we already have them. We have those coins. What are they? In Zimbabwe, they've been resisted. Even taxi drivers don't want to see them. You go to a supermarket and you are going to be given that coin. They will tell you, please give me a saka, a sweet, not that thing that you want to give me. Why? And now they are saying, we want to give you a bond note. Equivalent for what?
I just spoke to Tajamuka leader Linda Masarira, who was arrested and spent about 2.5 months in prison, and the last few weeks of at that time she was in the male section of Gukurahundi maximum prison. But she says that Zimbabwe now needs a fresh crop of young leaders who were not part of the liberation struggle, and people like Didmus Mutasa who have failed to deliver and should not be part of that of this new government. What can you say about this? And this is not just her sentiment, but a lot of other people feel that it's time for new, fresh blood. What can you say about that?
It's not a new story to People First. And to us, Didmus Mutasa is a part of our elder group. And a life without elders who actually tell you there's a pit there, 10 right, 10 left. I think it's a life that is really relegated for a failure. And we know what Mutasa is capable of doing, what Mutasa is not capable of doing. And I'm sure Linda has got her own personal feelings and ideas and opinion. And we wouldn't judge others by their... That's where I think we are different from other parties. People First allows people to, vent their feelings to say their views, and if they are worth taking them, if they are worth listening to them, why not? And with Linda, she's an individual. We really respect her views and her opinion.
And you talked about how education is important to you. You talked about going to school, and you recently graduated. You've got a doctorate. Can you confirm that you actually sat for it? And also, were you in the same class with First Lady Grace Mugabe, since she also graduated at the same time as you at the University of Zimbabwe? Did you see her at all studying?
It took me 6 years to acquire my PhD. And please don't ask me about other people. I'm not interested. Mine, I did 6 years to acquire my PhD. So with others, I don't know.
Did you see her at all, though, at the University of Zimbabwe, where you were studying?
Maybe we're going there different times. I don't know. It's a big institution.
And finally, Dr. Joice Mujuru, a lot of people ask if you will apologize to Zimbabweans for being part of a system that has created this crippling crisis in the country. What can you say about this, finally?
Violet, I'm a mother. And like what I said before, sitting on the terraces, mingling, discussing, seeing the damage that has gone on, surely I think it would take somebody with the heart of a stone not to say it was not right. We definitely, and my doing things right now is to try and prove to Zimbabweans that I'm a human being. I want to still show them that I'm still the same Teurai who suffered in the camps, who went for days and nights without food in the cold to try and liberate Zimbabwe. And by liberating Zimbabwe, I mean liberating these very same people who are still suffering. So I still have to work for them, not as their president if they don't like me, no, but to try and change the situation for the good.
That was Dr. Joice Mujuru speaking to us on the program Hot Seat. Mazuta maningi mai Mujuru.
Ndinotenda chaizvo, Violet.
You've been listening to the program Hot Seat with Violet Gonda.